Good morning and welcome everyone to today's webinar on how managed WAF can help you scale up your business. So before we start, a couple of housekeeping items. You will notice we are using the GoToWebinar viewer today. If you look at your control panel, the little orange panel will let you expand and hide that. This is where you can choose on how to listen to us today, either via microphone or speaker or the telephone. You will all have joined us in listen-only mode. That means you're muted to cut back on the background noise. But that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. So feel free to chat with us and drop any questions via the chat window, and we will be addressing them during the Q&A session of the webinar. So the webinar recording will be sent to all the webinar participants post the event. So we have Lalit Kumar, Security Solutions Architect at Amazon Internet Services. We have Venkatesh Sundar, or Venki as he's like to be called, founder at Indusface, and Sharad Sadekar, Senior VP and Head of Cybersecurity at HDFC Life. So what will our speakers cover today? Lalit will walk us through AWS Public Cloud and how it enables speed and agility for application development, and what AWS is doing on the security front to take the pain away from the customers. Venki will give us an overview of Indusface and then talk about how Indusface Managed WAF provides continuous protection to its business's web and digital assets, therefore allowing companies to focus on their core business. And finally, Sharad will walk us through a case study on how Indusface Managed WAF hosted on AWS is being used at HDFC Life. So with that said, I'll hand over the presentation to our first speaker, Lalit Kumar.
All right, once again, morning everyone. My name is Lalit. I'm a security architect with AWS. Today, I'm going to talk about AWS well-architected framework. AWS developed well-architected framework after reviewing thousands of customers' architecture on AWS. It is designed to help our customer to build the most secure, high-performing, resilient, and efficient infrastructure possible in cloud-native way. It provides a consistent approach for evaluating architectures and implementing designs through a set of questions across 5 pillars with design principle that scale with your needs over time. So once again, what is a well-architected framework? A framework that helps you design infrastructure that are secure, high-performing, resilient, and efficient. It's a systematic approach to evaluate your workload and see the design pattern and identify what are the gaps in your design and mitigate those gaps and risks. There are 5 pillars to AWS well-architected framework: operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, and cost optimization. For operational excellence, we should run and monitor systems that deliver business value. But then how do we achieve operational excellence? One way is automation. The way we treat our application as code, we could also treat infrastructure as code. So we should utilize CloudFormation, Terraform, or Ansible, or any other equivalent mechanism by which we can convert our infrastructure as a code and do a version control as well on our infrastructure. Documentation writing is typically a manual work where we can annotate documentation so that we know what's happening, and anyone who read the documentation understand what's going on. Rather than making large changes, we should utilize a mechanism of making frequent and small changes which are reversible in nature so that we don't disrupt anything. We should refine our operational procedures frequently, and while running operations, we should anticipate failure, or rather simulate failures and debate on what all could fail and learn from that, and thus continuously improving the process and procedures. Other pillar, which is the top priority for AWS, is security. How do we protect your information, the systems, configurations, your assets understanding what are your risks and how to mitigate them. The core to security is identity. Who gets access to what and what actions they can take. So there's an authentication, authorization, and then complete traceability, which comes through audit logs. This has been enabled by CloudTrail, which logs all the API calls, whether it's through console, through command line, or through SDK. Don't just build security at perimeter like security group, NACL, VPC. Also consider security at every layer. The operating system that we are utilizing, the operating system should be hardened. They should be patched. And continuously we should look for improving security in terms of what kind of threats are coming our way. For example, guard duty looks at what all threats are coming within your account, and you can take action based on them. Now, these actions should not be manual. We should try to automate these actions. For example, if someone open a code on a firewall and close it after 10 minutes, it's very difficult to identify these kind of actions and remediate in real time. So we should automate these kind of things, and this automation could be done with Lambda, where you could write a script based on an event. An event in this case would be opening a security group port. Based on that event, we can trigger a code that can actually revert the changes. Data security is of topmost concern, whether it's in transit or at rest. For transit, we should use HTTPS, while at rest, there's a KMS service which is integrated with more than 50 services, whether it's your EBS volume, RDS, where you store the data, or S3, where you're storing the data. You can apply encryption at all these service layers. And incident is something that teaches us a lot of things. So we should be prepared for security events and how do we handle incident. So there has to be a playbook that we should design for incident management. The next pillar is reliability. How our infrastructure recover from service disruption. If one of the instances goes down, it should not have an impact on my application. So we need to test recovery procedure. We need to test our backup, our snapshots. And if one of the machine fails, it should not overall impact my application availability. So auto-scaling is a mechanism by which we can horizontally scale the application. And if one of the machine goes down, the system will automatically spin up another machine, and our application will be highly available in all the conditions. We should not guess capacity, because in resource starvation can cause my user request to be dropped, rather than ensuring that a CPU utilization or a network in or number of IOPS are increasing or my number of users are increasing, I should be able to scale my system. And all this should come with automation. Manual changes takes time and takes a lot of understanding, which does not really help in today's application world. So utilize auto scaling and define your key KPI for application and set the triggers accordingly. So that's reliability. We should understand what all could be disrupted. What if my storage get filled? What if my application, my server dies? What if there is no network connection? We should consider all these things and design our solution. Now coming on to performance efficiency. Now there are different kinds of computing resources which are available. There are different kind of instances. There are memory intensive instances, there are IOPS intensive, there are more storage intensive, there are also more CPU. Depending on our application attributes, we should choose the right type of instances for us. And rather than just depending on server, we should also explore serverless architectures. There are a lot of workloads which are very predictable in nature. We require computing capacity at certain events. We could utilize Lambda, API Gateway, S3 to build serverless architecture. Rather than managing a server for a static website, we should utilize S3, for example, where we are offloading our manual efforts or operational effort to AWS, where you don't need to run web servers while utilizing S3 as a static website. Experiment more often. Now, all these services are pay-per-use model. So you can actually identify and run a lot of experiments, small experiments quite often. And if it doesn't work for you, you can always change. Mechanical sympathy is another thing. We have to understand the pattern, whether we really need a relational database or a document DB or a graph DB will solve my problem. There are multiple services that exist in AWS. Based on my data pattern, I should choose the database. Based on my storage requirement, whether I need a static store, which is S3, where I need to store my images, my media, videos, or my uh, JavaScript or other CSS files, I should choose S3. While anything which is on transactional and requires a block storage, I should go for EBS volume. And anything that require a database, of course, I'll go to relational or NoSQL database. So we need to understand the patterns there and accordingly choose components. Cost is something that everyone is concerned about. Cloud is a pay-per-use model. Our idea is to make it pay-per-need. What you really need, spend money on that. You have various mechanisms where you can save money on, whether it's on-demand, reserve instances. Adopt a consumption model basis on your need. For example, you have developers that works only for 8 hours. After 8 hours, you should run automation script so that it can shut down the resources and you don't pay for those resources after that. Overall, you should measure how efficient the utilization of those resources is. How efficient are they? If they are not being utilized heavily, then you should consider downsizing your resources. And rather than spending on managing instances, probably you could look for higher level services like relational databases, where we provide a managed database service rather than you set up replication, failover, and snapshot backup. Let AWS manage these heavy lifting operation for you, and you simplify and focus on your data innovation. We should also analyze where your cost is going to, and probably you could utilize a different kind of service or change the pattern. Use managed services to reduce your overall cost rather than managing resources. You should drive your focus towards your code, your applications. Let's look at a reference architecture. There are two types of services in AWS. Services with native HA, or we also call them inherently fault tolerant services. These are managed services from AWS. For example, Amazon S3. To consume S3, you don't have to set up servers, storage, or anything. You just go ahead and utilize that service. S3 simply is a get put storage. ELB, you don't have to deploy multiple ELB. We manage the high availability, fault tolerance, failure, capacity utilization of ELB. DynamoDB, similarly, you don't have to manage the capacity and IOPS. We manage that for you. EFS, Redshift, Route 53, and there are many more. These are all inherently fault tolerant services. That means high availability, failure, recovery, capacity, scale is being managed by AWS rather than you manage that. So try to utilize more managed services. Then there are services which are with configurable HA. For example, Amazon EC2, it's like a virtual server. Now, in a server, disk could fail, power could fail, underlying hardware could fail. So you have to design it for your requirement of HA. That means you could utilize multiple availability zone. Amazon EBS, which is the storage connect to EC2. Then RDS, whether it runs in a single availability zone or multiple availability zone. Let's take an example. While you're deploying your web servers, you could choose to deploy it in one availability zone, but if it fails, then your application goes down. Or rather, utilize a pattern of an arbitrator, which is a load balancer with load balance across two availability zones. Availability zones are distinct. You can take it as an analogous to data center. However, availability zone is actually a cluster of data center. They're they're physically isolated. There's separate power, separate networking connecting to them. So you'll have a load balancer connecting to two web server which are deployed in two different availability zone A and B. In case server goes down, you still have another server. Even if one complete availability zone goes down, that means entire set of data center goes down, even then you have high availability. Looking at a more realistic example where you have your web application running. In this web application, we have Route 53, which is a highly available service. The static content is being served through CloudFront, and there's a load balancer where we have a group of web server which are in auto scaling group. In case more load comes in, we are going to scale this layer of web server. We're going to add more web server basis on the parameter that you define, the metric you define. The metric could be CPU, metric could be number of user, metric could be the memory consumption or the disk usage. Similarly, auto scaling could also be set up for application servers. For database servers, there is a master slave and a synchronous replication. In case one database goes down, you always have another database and you never lose any of your transaction. So we can design a highly available solution utilizing these attributes of managed services and auto scaling and database replication. Now, security in AWS, as I mentioned, is a top priority. We inherit global security compliance and controls, and then we have visibility across these through audit trail, through config, through guard duty. We also we encourage you to automate your security operations, encrypt your data. We do have a large network of security partner and solutions. For example, Indusface, one of the example if I have to take VFS Global. Now they open the booking window, appointment booking window for a limited time. And at that point of time, multiple bots could come in and choke the traffic, which can block the legit transactions. And then people could actually leverage that. And there are the group of people who are actually blocking it, and they can sell these appointments at a higher price later on, so that the legit user does not get the slot. And certain people who are controlling it, they can actually fill those slots. So this is how do we differentiate between a legit traffic at layer 7. So in this phase, I think now we are going to go into the next stage of the presentation where Venkat is going to talk about how in this phase ensure that at layer 7, how do you build protection? How do you have a managed WAF running on top of your application? So now I pass on the control to Venkat. If you have any question, please feel free to put questions on the question answer a chat window, and we'll try to answer as much as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Lalit. Thanks for laying the foundation about the infrastructure as a code, which is the basis on which we can build additional managed WAF services, which is what we specialize in. So AppTrana is a product name from Indusface, which is a managed WAF offering. What I'm going to do is take off from where Lalit left, and as I go through this, talk about a few case studies, and we will also be ending the presentation where all the pieces come together, and we'll have a case study from Sharad as part of how they're using it at HDFC Life. So managed web application firewall is a layer 7 security offering from Indusface. This entire thing is built on AWS as a SaaS offering. So First, let me decipher the components of a managed firewall, managed web application firewall. So at an application layer, if you just sit back and think about what are all the, as a business owner of where applications are central to some aspects of your business, what are all some of the questions that comes to your mind? First question that would most likely come to the mind, which we have found out by talking to many people and customers, is what are my risks? I know there are many risks that exist in the world. What are my relevant risks? What is relevant risk to my application? We call that use case detect, where before we get into protection and application firewall managed WAF, you need to have a continuous visibility onto your existing risk, right? So that is the first use case. The second use case is, now that I know about my risk, what can I do to protect them and protect them quickly on a continuous basis, and mitigate those risks. So we call the mitigation of those risks as protect use case. Now, applications are dynamic, and especially in today's day and age with web services and integration within multiple services being pieced together to provide simplicity to customer, but there is a lot of complex and a lot of moving part in the back end to provide a simple interface to the end user to do whatever the application is designed to do. And because of this moving part, just detecting and protecting one time and then expecting that you're secure is not going to work. You have to continuously monitor it with getting continuous visibility into your existing risk posture on a continuous basis, protect against those risk posture, and keep updating your security policy on a continuous basis, which is what we call monitor. The detect, protect, and monitor combined, where you can go with a security expert to manage it, is what we call the managed WAF offering, as opposed to just a product offering which will leave it to the customers to configure it, because it requires a specialized expertise. We also have a fourth piece which you can also leverage based on the fact that we are built on AWS, or customers themselves can have any other CDN provider. We make sure that this entire managed WAF can be deployed behind a CDN, or we can configure a CDN as part of it, so that the customer does not have to make any compromises with respect to performance or security, and it can be a no trade-off, best in breed security that they can provide as a managed WAF offering. Now let me double click and look at the components of the managed WAF in a little bit more detail. The foundation of a managed WAF, or the web application firewall, is it has to run on an infrastructure, and that infrastructure that we have chosen is a cloud native architecture, which is AWS. So the 5 pillars that Lalit talked about, we automatically get it, and we do not have to reinvent the wheel for those aspects. Like some of the things that he talked about, where there is inherently fault tolerance built in those services, the ELB, the Route 53, the S3 buckets, all those services are used by us as part of the SaaS architecture. So we do not have to worry about fault tolerance, and we get it automatically based on the infrastructure choice we made for hosting our managed WAF platform. Then there is the web application scanner, which is a offering, and then web application firewall, DDoS and bot protection, and all of this combined will provide you a threat intelligence platform which will allow you continuous management. I'm going to go into each one of them and talk about a little bit more detail about the components of the managed WAF, and also give you some examples of use cases where those components help a customer. So cloud native architecture, I already talked about it, and basically the auto scaling is one of the key features where we do not have to size it up for a predefined guessed peak capacity. So one of the examples that Lalit gave, which is specific to Indusface Managed WAF offering, is a large online visa appointment booking service. The application is not always online. Like an example is China to Australia visa, or a Ukraine to Poland visa. Each one of them are different applications where the user is somebody trying to book an appointment for the destination country from an origin country. and that application is open maybe one week a quarter or 1 day a quarter. And in that period, the user has to come in, book an appointment, and then go ahead to the office and get an appointment and go through the process of applying for the visa. In this case, the ability to deal with peaks and volumes, unforeseen spikes where each request in isolation looks perfectly legitimate, but the intent behind it is not really legitimate because it is to fill up the appointment. Required a combination of the infrastructure has to be stable. Once the infrastructure is stable and can handle with this volume, then the managed WAF component comes in and tries to continuously decipher the good traffic and the bad traffic based on the intent behind the traffic and come up with policies to mitigate those illegitimate attempts, right? So the cloud native architecture gives us a lot of infrastructure benefits and allows us as an application firewall company to focus on innovation on layer 7 only. Most of my customers, they like the managed WAF offering, not just because of the rules within the WAF, but the foundation on which you build the entire managed WAF offering starts with detection of your risks. So the detection of your risk, one of the key components is an automated web application scanning, which allows the customers to do scanning of their application unlimited number of times throughout the year, get an understanding of the risk. I mean, one of the sayings is no visibility and no security. The security starts from understanding, getting a visibility of your risks, and then taking action against those risks. So the web application scanning allows you to get that visibility whenever there is a change on your application, whenever there is an update on production environment, get an understanding of what is your current risk. And that becomes the starting point on which you can either take action directly in the application or take action in the application as well as come up with updates in the managed WAF to protect against those risks. Within the web application scanning, just an automated solution can only take you so far. Like we also would recommend customers to do manual penetration testing and business logic assessment at least once a quarter or at least twice a year to make sure that whenever there are major changes, business logic assessment is also done to make sure that you can take steps to protect against them. An example of a business logic vulnerability which an automated scanner cannot find out is I go to a website, let's say it's a banking application. I log in as Venki. Then there is a statement download that I can do. When I do a statement download, I try to modify the query parameter in the request to see can I download Nikhil's statement. Now this, if the application is not doing the check to make sure the authenticated user and the document of the statement that they are requesting do not match, they have to be rejected. It's a business logic vulnerability if it is not done. And these kind of unraveling of those risks can be done only through understanding the context of the application and having manual assessment also done on top of automated scanning. Once you have identified the risk, obviously the next step is to go ahead and mitigate those risks directly in the application. Now, there are reasons why this might not always be possible. And even if it is possible, it makes a lot of sense to also patch them or have a policy to protect against those risks in a web application firewall layer. I will explain why I'm saying this. The example I gave before, where Venki logs in and tries to download a document with a document ID that is associated with Nikhil. If somebody attempts that, the fact that you are preventing it and blocking it on your application means your application is not vulnerable. But the fact that somebody has tried to do that is giving you insight that the person you are dealing with on the other side is a guaranteed attacker or not a good user. Now, having this policy in WAF and that event can give you an intelligence that, yeah, it is not just about virtual patching, but it's actually about tracking a behavioral intent of a person on the other side. And hence, you can take a much more dynamically aggressive posture to block that user. Don't worry about false positive in that session. So that's why a managed WAF can have all this intelligence correlated with scanning and take dynamic postures of defense based on identification of the behavioral intent that we see on the other side. It's not just about virtual patching, right? So by combining the scanning and the protection, you will be able to get deeper insights into behavioral intent of the person on the other side. And that's a key aspect of the entire managed web application firewall, beyond just virtual patching, which is what I feel a lot of people in the industry who give a standalone solution talk about. And the virtual patching typically also has to be done by the customer. And a lot of customers might have the expertise, but you might want to think about, is that time spent better on growing your business, and give that to a partner who specialize and build a team on this as well. DDoS and bot protection as a separate category, which are independent of your vulnerabilities. Now, a vulnerability, the detect protect has a lot of synergy in it, because if you think about it like a hacker, the hacker is also doing a detect, and then they are trying to do an exploit. By doing a detect and protect, we are able to not just do a virtual patching, but we are also able to get a foundational unit of intelligence of a hacker behavior, which can be used for future preventions and feed into a threat intelligence platform. DDoS and bots are independent of your vulnerabilities. They are just generic pain in the neck for many businesses, where, especially at an application layer, where with very minimal compute resource, and you will be able to bring down an application, or you can have bots which are perfectly legitimate, but the intent, the example that on the online visa that we gave, will have an illegitimate intent, even though the bot request in isolation looks perfectly legitimate. So these kinds of things, as a managed WAF, of course, the threshold based rules, of course, the anomaly scoring and all those things will be there in place, and bot signature detection. Those are the baseline which has to be there as part of the out of box. But the custom rules and the behavioral rules through custom rules that we can build on top of that becomes a differentiation between effective prevention and just a check mark. So the online visa application example, it was a behavioral workflow based rule that we had to provide, that based on this transaction between page A to page C, which is confirmation, this is what a normal behavior looks like, and this is what an abnormal bad intent behavior looks like, and come up with specific workflow based custom rules besides just threshold based and rate control rules. And that helps in effective DDoS and bot protection at a layer 7, which through a combination of analysis and alerts through the product, but combined with a human intelligence to act on it, to come up with custom rules, is what makes the managed WAF effective for customers. Another example I can give you here is a brokerage, Edelweiss brokerages, online brokerages that is happening, where trading happens. Now, if you just apply a simple threshold-based rules, recently elections happened, and the volume that we saw was seriously high a couple of weeks before the election and on the day of the election. A threshold-based blind trade control rule would have just blocked off many legitimate requests. So getting this context, having the right set of alerts, analyzing those traffic, and then being able to have a distinction between a legitimate user and a legitimate intent traffic based on human intelligence becomes very effective in terms of minimizing or eliminating false positives. Site acceleration is something, again, security need not be a trade-off. Even the most dynamics of site has 70, like if you take Facebook as well, most dynamic site, 70-75% of the page that you see on Facebook has got static content on it. The style sheets, the images, and the outline of the page. So the managed WAF is architected to be neutral, and it can be deployed behind a CDN, any CDN, or the AWS CDN. Given that we are an AWS SaaS provider, AWS also offers a CDN service, and the customer can subscribe to it on its own, and we integrate and work with that as well. So each of these components, what I'm going to spend a little bit of time here is it's not a sales pitch. It is actually our vision in terms of how we build this product. The entire managed WAF I talked about the components, but what I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes is how each of these components sort of reinforce each other. So I talked about automated scanning, and then I also talked about a manual business logic assessment done to automate to augment the automated scanning, because there are certain things an automated scanner cannot find out. Now, the automated scanner as a baseline improves the efficiency of a manual pen testing because they don't have to do a lot of things that can be automated. The manual pen testing results act as a feed back into the signature development labs to see if we can add them back as generic signature templates or automate subsequent scans with that. So the manual assessment pen testing improves automated scanning. Automated scanning in turn improves the efficiency of manual pen testing. One of the goals is to make sure the time taken for the pen tester is not reduced, but the efficiency and the effectiveness of the time is improved. Right? So anything that can be automated has to be moved back into automated scanning, and the pen tester or the manual time has to be spent more on application context and context specific vulnerabilities that we can find out. Now, these things reinforce each other, the automated scanning improving pen testing and the pen testing improving automated scanning. And the other thing is, by integrating it with the WAF, the automated scanner is just having a view of the application as the world sees it and tries to navigate through, crawl through all the links and try to do some test cases. Now, as part of the managed WAF, which has a scanner in, if we see from real live traffic, there are some pages that are being requested and being visited as part of real traffic, but they are not covered in the automated scanner. Those real traffic can be fed back into the automated scanner to improve the coverage of real life traffic. So the WAF improves the coverage detection of pages that was not crawled, but can now be crawled by adding it back into the scanner coverage to make sure the coverage of the automated scanner improves, which in turn will improve the pen testing and all those things as well. So WAF improves detection. Now, if the detection is and your risk coverage of your risk detection is higher, it is automatic that your protection also improves with the integration, because you automatically have virtual patching, and it's not just a virtual patching as I mentioned above, it is a unit for tracking hacker behavior as well, based on the custom policy that you have created based on the detection. Now, as we evolve and more application, a lot of the things can be blocked just with the out-of-box core rule set without increasing any false positive risks. By each of this reinforcing each other, even the out-of-box rule sets and the quality of those rule sets to be able to protect a lot of things out of box improves. So all of this, as part of reinforcing each other, ends up improving the entire management part of the managed WAF offering. So we do not have to worry about infrastructure as a code and availability and all those things. One of the things we are still striving harder is we have a lot of data, and being able to access those data in real time in relevant context sensitive manner to customers when they ask for information is something that we have to invest on the right set of tools through AWS or other tools. We have the ELK stack that we have built up, so that these data can be translated into more relevant real-time information to customers as well, to give them the visibility. Now, AWS and its 5 pillars of services allows us to do a lot more, which is a continuous endeavor for us to keep improving it to provide customer delight as we go ahead. So in a nutshell, the entire thing that we talked about, there are a lot of engineering and other things behind it, but from a customer experience standpoint, the entire onboarding is typically as part of the SaaS can be done in minutes with protection from the 5th minute or 4 to 5 minutes that you take to onboard the entire site. So each one of you, if you want, you can go ahead and try out the onboarding for one of your applications at apptrana.indusface.com. There is no credit card required. It can be a 14-day free trial. And all the customers who sign up for this trial are also automatically eligible for a basic scan that is free forever, 2 scans a month, free forever. So no matter how much I talk about it, the validation of any concept is the product idea is meaningless unless and until it is not adopted by customers globally. So I think for us, the biggest pride in whatever we have built is from this slide that you see in front of us, front of you. 1,000+ global customers, majority of them in India. One such customer who I would like to thank Sharad, who has been happy to volunteer to come and talk about the story, is HDFC Life. So I'm going to pass on, and this is probably the most important part of the presentation because all the things comes together, and I would like Sharad to share his experience on how all of this came together. Sharad, I'm making you a presenter.
Yeah. Thanks, Venki. Uh, Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharad Sudadikar, CISO HDFC Life. Let me brief you about HDFC Life. We are a joint venture between HDFC and Standard Life. About our last performance, our new business premium was 1949 billion, which was 32% over the last financial year. Our asset management was 1,256 billion, a growth of 18%. We had 51.4 million life insured last year. Our profit after tax was 12.8 billion, a growth of 15%. In year 2014, we embarked on a digital transformation journey in which we managed to have a paperless and frictionless journey for our customers, out of which 99% new business came from digital platform itself. We have deployed around 150 bots already. Okay, so it's self-served via chatbots and voice bots. Our claim settlement ratio was 99% plus, and our servicing window was 8 hours for 97% of the time. Now we have a different set of challenges. The world is changing, and it's changing very fast. For business, the time to reach 50 million users is reducing. For airlines, it took around 68 years. For Facebook, it took around 3 years to reach 50 million. And for Pokemon, the game which people love, it took 19 days flat. Understand there is a disruption in the air. And this is insurance industry is not an exception. My customers having mobiles and they are connected. Our partners are digital and they are connected. We have an open architecture. If I give an example, can sell any other life insurance product. We continue to have a legacy problem. So basically, our existing on-prem tool did not provide deep visibility and protection. Our time to market is very less. Which brings concerns about cybersecurity would be for portals. It provided continuous deep visibility and correlation between detect and protect, which means very less false positive. Second point is it was a service model. It allowed us to focus on our core business that was life insurance. and leave the expertise, app security, and web protection on Indusface. Indusface also had a 24 by 7 incident response team, which was critical for HDFC Life. This platform also has matured over a period of time, which can now integrate, onboard, and protect easily and seamlessly from cyber threats. Finally, I would like to say it's value for money, which goes a long way with our vision statement of HDFC Life. Best value for money. So the final word, just take it, configure it, and get value out of it. Thank you. Over to you, Venki.
Thanks, Sharad. I mean, I really had goosebumps listening to customers speak about it. It sort of validates years and years of effort, R&D effort, and team building, and it's very satisfying to say the least to see that being put into action by customers, innovative and progressive customers like yourself, and talk about it as well. So thanks once again. I think we are done with the session. We can open it for Q&A. I mean, any questions that has come up, Nikhil, you let us know.
Yeah. So thank you, guys. I do understand. I think during Sharad's
We can take.
Yeah. Just want to just bring a sorry to everybody. I think during Sharad's presentation there was a loss of audio. So just sorry about that. I think there was some internet issue here. So just a few questions that I have got from our audience. Actually, I've got a few very good questions, but I'm just going to take up about 2 or 3 questions. So the first question here is from one of our audience members is, can you address zero-day attacks? So I think I'll put this on to Venki if you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts on this.
Okay. So, I mean, my sales hat answer would be yes. My technical hand answer would be not all zero-day attacks can be addressed, but I will give you some hard numbers on in terms of the zero-day attacks. So our signature development labs comes up with monitoring of all the zero-day threats for the month. We have a monthly infographic that we send out. Because we are scanning so many applications and we have rules being created automatically based on the insights we get from scanning, more than 75 to 80%, more than 80% of the attacks are blocked by us even before day 0. The example I can give you is the struts vulnerability that happened, the Apache struts vulnerability. That was a zero-day vulnerability, I think a couple of years back, and there was another one recently. It was specific to the Apache struts framework, and any application that was built on Apache struts were vulnerable to that zero-day attack. But the attack payload and the exploit was basically command injection over an HTTP, and that was already covered by us in our core rule set, and hence we are able to block that even before day 0. So the answer is yes, we block zero-day attack, but not all of it. Our attempt is to get 100%, but we are not even there. The balance 20% that are not blocked by us through our core rule set can be blocked by us within a day through custom rule set. Some of them cannot be blocked at all. And one of the biggest zero-day attack, Heartbleed, that happened a few years back, there was no virtual patching available other than having a WAF that is not vulnerable to Heartbleed. So the virtual patching was just making sure our front end was not there. But in terms of identifying the payload and blocking the user, there was no legitimate virtual patch available for Heartbleed. So those kind of situations, we also transparently, as part of our monthly infographic, tell out that the best course of defense here is to patch your application or patch the front end to those applications, which is what happened with us in the Heartbleed situation that happened. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So I'll just take up one more question. This is on managed WAF. So I think this also, Venki would be the right person to give his thoughts. So the question was, Would managed WAF do custom rules only for your own scanner findings or with other findings too?
So yeah, I mean, we provide custom rules automatically as part of a unified interface with our product. But having said that, if the customer has done scanning through other tools or business logic or manual pen testing through other vendors, they can send us the report. Our first endeavor would be to see if there is something found by some other thing and not found by us. We will try to improve that aspect first. But having said that, as part of virtual patching, you give us the report or talk to us about your problem in English, and we'll translate that into managed WAF custom rules to protect you against that. So the answer is yes, we can work, but in terms of an integration within the portal, it is done only with our product. But in terms of a service, we can work with any other third-party tools as well. I think we should do this third question. I'll just So the third question, which is an interesting one, I think Nikhil was going to go into the poll, but I think it's important to have this addressed as well. I think this is best answered by Lalit. Lalit, the question is: AWS also has its WAF. How do you see Indusface Managed WAF fitting in? Are they using AWS WAF?
All right, so we are a platform of choice, first of all. We do have our WAF service as well. And now we have to understand the key differences here. The way we have built our WAF, it's kind of a rule engine where, for example, you can bring in your OWASP top 10. But then it's a managed service from this point that you don't have to install and configure WAF, but you have to deploy your rule sets. Now there's no automated scanner. Now the intelligence has to come from you. That's where our partner Indusface comes in, and they have an integrated scanner. So I think there's a difference that we need to understand, that if you want to build something on your own, there are rules, and there is a vibrant now community who are writing rules, so you can deploy rules on AWS WAF. If you need something that need to be managed, then what we have today is a managed DDoS service from AWS, which works across the account. Or if you're specifically looking for just layer 7, then you could look at something like Indusface, which comes with integrated scanner that keeps on hunting for vulnerabilities.
Thanks. I think.
Okay. Thank you, Venki and Lalit, for your insights here. So thank you, audience, for the questions. For your questions, if you missed answering any of your questions, we will make sure to reach out to you all personally and post this webinar with your inquiries. So we have just set up a quick poll, which we'll throw up now. I would just encourage you all to give us your valuable feedback on this webinar. The poll will start for 10 seconds, starting now. So I encourage the audience to take a 14-day free trial of our AppTrana solution. For this, you can reach out to us at sales@indusface.com, or you can visit our website, apptrana.indusface.com, and visit our pricing page to start your 14-day free trial. So thank you, Lalit, Venki, and Sharad for your valuable insights, and the audience for taking your precious time to be part of this webinar. See you all. Take care and have a great day ahead. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.